Welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how the truth will set you free. This is something that I did not understand for the majority of my life, but if you want to be free from your mind, free from your anxiety, free from your suffering, today's episode is really going to help you out with that. Let's dive in. I've heard it my entire life, this phrase, the truth will set you free. And only recently, and I mean maybe the past 6 months, has the phrase actually really started to sink into my bones and I really start to understand it. I was always like, what does it mean that the truth will set you free? And so I'll give you a story real quick about a conversation that I had with one of my clients. And I have permission to tell this story, so no worries. And it will make sense how we need to be truth seekers and how this truth will set you free, and it'll help you create the freedom that you're actually looking for in your life. So my client was telling me a story, and he was telling me a story. He was telling me this story, and the story was he was telling his friend a story that my client's friend's wife had told him. It wasn't a big deal. It was just a story, right? Hey, your wife told me this story, and he was just reflecting this story back to him. And my client's friend said, well, that doesn't really make sense. I've never heard her tell that story that way. And I've heard her tell that story a few times, but I've never heard her tell that story that way before. And he said it maybe, I don't know the tone because I wasn't there, maybe in a condescending way, maybe not in a condescending way. And my client took that phrase of, I've never heard her tell that story that way before. And he had come to me and we were talking on a call, and he said he called me a liar. And he got really hung up on this one thing. And he kept saying to himself, and then he started saying to me a couple days later, he called me a liar. And he was pretty, if I'm being honest, pretty pissed about it, right? So I said, okay, so just curious then, did he call you a liar? And he said, yes, he called me a liar. He told me, well, that doesn't make sense because I've heard her tell that story a few times before, and I've never heard her tell that story that way before. And then so I said, okay, so he called you a liar? And he said, yes. Did you not hear what I said? And I said, no. I heard what you said. I just didn't hear the part where he called you a liar. And he says, well, he did call me a liar. And then I said, okay, did the words, you are a liar, come out of his mouth? And he's like, no, but you see how based off of everything that I just told you that he called me a liar, right? I said, well, I could see how you can make that assumption, sure. But in this physical reality, he did not call you a liar. He said, well, no, I mean, those words didn't come out of his mouth. I said, okay, so in reality, he did not call you a liar, right? And he said, no. And I said, but in your head, you were sure that he called you a liar, right? And he said, yes. And I said, so do you see how out of everything that's happening, you are causing yourself, do you see how much suffering you are in right now because you really, truly thought that he called you a liar? From what he said, you said he called you a liar. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, do you see how much suffering you're in? Because what he was hung up on was he called me a liar. And he was pissed. And he was in mental suffering and pissed about this to the point where a few days later he had to bring it up to me. And when he started telling me the story again, he started getting more pissed. So he was caught up on this point of he called me a liar. And then when I actually went to the story with him, he never called him a liar. Like I can see how he can pull that out and he can make assumptions. Now assumptions though are not reality. But I could see how he made that assumption. I get that. That makes sense to me. But what he was so hung up on was an assumption. It wasn't reality. You see what I'm saying? It's a very trivial example, but we do this all day long. We take reality, and what we do is we distort reality with our minds to make it be whatever we want it to be. Our ego usually changes it to be what we want it to be. And a lot of times what happens is this happens very unconsciously. And so for him, he was like, yeah, he called me a liar. But in reality, that was an assumption. That wasn't an actual, in reality, in physical reality, his friend did not look at him, point to him and say, you are a liar. But in his head, all of his suffering was coming from, quote unquote, he called me a liar. And so it's, like I said, it's a very trivial example. It's not a huge deal. It's not life-changing, but We do this all day long. We take this reality of the reality which was presented in front of him was, I've never heard her tell that story before. That was reality. He distorted it and he moved it and he shifted it to make himself a victim of a story when he wasn't even really a victim in the story in the first place. And so we a lot of times distort reality, and this is super important for you to understand, like we are constantly distorting reality. And when we're distorting reality, we are not in truth. And if we're not in truth, we're not free. And he was in mental suffering because of the fact that he had distorted reality. He wasn't living in truth. So we move it and we change it to fit our story, to fit our narrative. And so my client is trapped in his own mind in suffering for something that did not really happen in reality. He was trapped. He was not free. He was not in truth. So when you get to truth, the truth will set you free. We get free from our story, free from the suffering that our mind causes us to be in all the time. And this is what it comes down to, is clear thinking. We think, like if I were to walk up to somebody on the street and say, hey, do you feel like you're a clear thinker? I believe that probably every single person I went up to would say, yeah, I think clearly. But if we were to be able to pick apart the stories and narratives in their mind, we can see that there is there's very little clear thinking that happens. It's a lot of distorted realities. And so being a clear thinker, and like to really see reality as it is, without our conditionings, without our programmings, without our stories, without our narratives, without our religions, without our beliefs, without our self-limiting beliefs, without our fears, without any of those. Being a clear thinker without all of that stuff is way more valuable than being smart. It might be the most valuable thing that you could have, is the ability to see and think extremely clearly without placing your distortion of reality on top of it. Like knowledge is great. Reading a book, all of that stuff is great, but wisdom is better. And wisdom is the ability to see things clearly, to see things as they truly are, not as we think they are. Real wisdom is extreme self-awareness. The hard thing about this, though, is to actually see the truth, to remove ourselves, to not see something that we can get so wrapped up in subjectively and start see it objectively. To, as I always say, you can't read the jar when you're in, or you can't, excuse me, I'm screwing up the quote that I use all the time. You can't read the label when you're inside the jar. You have to pull yourself out of the jar to read the label. You have to pull yourself out of your mind, out of yourself, to look at yourself from a third person's perspective and be like, what's really happening here? That right there might be one of the most valuable things that you could have. Being a clear thinker is way more valuable than being smart, way more valuable than acquiring knowledge. It's really about seeing things as they are without our stories and our narratives. So it's hard to see the truth, though. And it's hard because you have to get your ego out of the way. You have to be okay with looking at something objectively and opening yourself up to being incorrect, opening yourself up to being false, to seeing your own lies. And most people don't want to do that. The smaller you can make your ego, the more you can see the truth for what it actually is. And the more that you can see the truth for what it actually is, the less suffering that you'll go through, and the more free that you will be because you're seeing things in truth. Our ego is what really clouds reality. You know, in my example with my client, you know, his ego was making him play the victim because when he was younger, that's what got him attention from his parents. And so when he was younger, that's how he got attention from his parents, from playing the victim. And he got essentially what he wanted when he was 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And now, because that's a pattern, he's learned to do the exact same thing again. And that's what he wants again. He unconsciously seeks this again. And so the smaller that you can make your ego, the less conditionings will come up from the past. And it comes down to like looking at something really objectively and saying like, I'm triggered right now. Why am I triggered? Like, so he was pissed off. Why am I pissed off right now? Is it because of what he said or because of how I took it? What exactly did he say? Did he say that I'm a liar? No. How am I taking it? I'm taking it as if he's calling me a liar. Okay. Is that truth? Did he call me a liar? What is it showing me about myself? What's showing me about my ego? What's it showing me about my patterns? What's it showing me about my paradigm of the world? And I'll give you an example from my own personal life. So I noticed myself in this suffering. It was like 6 months ago. Lauren and I got into a little argument about something, and it was something super small. Like, we rarely ever have arguments, but we got into an argument about something, right? And it was so small, I don't even remember what the hell it was. If I did, I'd tell you guys what it was, but I just don't remember what it was. And I don't remember what it was, but about 30 minutes later, I was even more pissed than I was during the argument. And so I noticed, I was like, I'm feeling, a little like pissed right now. I'm a little anxious. Like, I'm just not feeling calm. I'm not feeling, normal. And so I kind of took a step back. I removed myself from the jar and I started questioning myself. I was trying to see things more clearly. Where am I distorting reality, or am I seeing it as it actually is? And so I was taking myself out of my head and I was looking at what I was doing. And I was like, what am I saying to myself? And I was having a conversation after the argument happened. I was having a conversation with myself and creating a fake reality, but because I was in my fake reality, it felt like reality. And that feeling of reality made me more pissed. And so I kept repeating to myself, I was like, damn, I feel like she just doesn't appreciate me. I work so hard to do all of this stuff and to give us the life that we have, and I just don't feel appreciated. She doesn't appreciate me. I kept saying this in my head. And so I took a step back and I was like, why am I triggered right now? And I was like, I don't feel appreciated. And I was like, okay. Was anything said to me about not being appreciated? And I was like, no. Okay, so in reality, the truth, nothing was ever said about me not being appreciated or not being good enough or whatever it might be. And then so I said, okay, is it true that Lauren doesn't appreciate me? And I was like, no, definitely not, because I have a whole lot more examples of her appreciating me than not. And so I was like, okay, so I am in suffering right now because I'm making up my own story in my head that is not based in truth, and it is causing me suffering. It is my ego wanting to be right. It is my ego saying, oh, you're not good enough. And so what happens is I need to take a step back. I need to look at things objectively, and I need to turn my ego down and see things in reality. And I was triggering myself for no reason. And I was stuck in a pattern. I was stuck in a story. And so what was happening is I wasn't free. So what I do, I tried to find the truth in reality, in physical reality right here in front of me. Not something that I'm thinking, not something that's happened in the past, not something that some future that I'm imagining right now. I was in the physical reality. In the physical reality, was this what happened? No. Okay, then I am full of shit, right? The truth will set you free. Free from your ego, free from your story, free from your suffering. And what we have to learn is to think clearly, and to think clearly, you have to be the type of person who wants to be radically honest with yourself and with everyone else around you. Because when you lie to someone else, you're lying to yourself. When you lie to yourself, you're lying to the rest of the world. You have to be radically honest, because when you want to be radically honest, it means that you want to be free. You have to be radically honest. And then to go into it and question your thoughts. Question. You'll notice that a large percentage of your thoughts are complete bullshit. And believe me, I understand it takes a lot of work. Like, this isn't like, the reason why I think most people don't do this is because, number one, they're not aware of this. And number two, then this takes a lot of work to take a step back and start to question yourself, because then you got to prove yourself wrong, and your ego doesn't like to be wrong. So it takes a lot of work. It takes awareness, taking yourself out of that moment and seeing it as it honestly actually is, and asking yourself questions, and asking yourself real questions like, is this the truth, or is this something that I'm making up? What is the truth? Well, if this is the truth and I'm saying something else, that means that I am actually lying to myself. I am the liar in this situation. Why am I lying to myself? What benefit do I get out of this? Is this something that I want to continue doing? If I don't, how can I stop doing this thing? And as you start to see things more clearly, and you really see them as they truly are, you start to set yourself free. And you start to set yourself free from your conditionings. You start to set yourself free from your paradigms, your patterns that you've acquired over years and years and years that you're probably very unconscious of. And you start to set yourself free from your ego that has kept you trapped, your ego that has made you a victim, your ego that has told you that you're not good enough and is constantly looking for ways to show that you're not good enough. And so for all of us out there, I think one of the most important things we could do, sure, I want you to become smart and read things and become accomplished and be successful and have all the love that you can in the world. But what I really think is that we should all seek truth, and we should seek truth by trying to see things as clear as we possibly can. Can we get better at clearly thinking all the time? Because if we can, if we seek the truth is what will set us free. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please do me a favor. Share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. Also, if you love this podcast, you'll definitely love something I have coming out called Mindset Mentor Plus. It is the plus side, an extra version of this podcast. As you know, this podcast comes out 4 times a week, but in Mindset Mentor Plus, every single episode that I put out 4 times a week is going to come with detailed worksheets, multiple pages to go deeper into every single subject so that you can get better knowledge from it, but also start to integrate it into your life, because it's going to come with journaling prompts to work into your life. It's going to come with assignments to work into your life. There's going to be exclusive Q&A sessions with me. There's going to be an entire community of people who all listen to the podcast, who all have signed up for Mindset Mentor Plus, that are all interested in learning and growing themselves, that you could connect with. And it's going to be coming out very soon, and I will be announcing it soon. But if you want to sign up for the waitlist to learn more and to be the first to learn about it, go to mindsetwaitlist.com. Reason why is because the people who are on the waitlist, the founding members are going to get a discount. And so if that's something that you want to learn about, I will email you first before I announce it on social media, before I announce the podcast. All you have to do is go to mindsetwaitlist.com and sign up right now. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make someone else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day.